I have to confess something before we start. For a long stretch of my 20s, I was a professional watcher of videos exactly like this one. Everyone gave me the same little hit, that this time I'd actually change. And it lasted right up until Tuesday, when the old me wandered back in like he'd just stepped out for a snack. I told myself I was learning. I was really just collecting badges I never used. Which brings me to something awkward. You probably don't need another self-improvement video. And I have, unfortunately, made one. But stay with me, because the thought that kept circling for me back then is the same one that probably hit you when you clicked. Why do I keep watching these? That question, the fact that it nags at all, is the first sign of something the research on this exact feeling actually has a name for. And it's not a breakdown, it's the start of the part where things finally change. Here's the name, it's a quarter-life crisis. And before you roll your eyes at the word crisis, one study put it at around 95% of people in their 20s. There's a line people love about that word, that crisis is two halves stuck together. Danger and opportunity. It's a weird accurate map of where you are. Because here's what the feeling actually is. It's not that you're lazy. It's that some part of you has quietly worked out that the route you're standing on is over. You've already cleared every single trainer on it, and the game is just waiting for you to notice there's nothing left to grind here. Let me back up, because there is an order to this, and the order turns out to be the whole point. Stage 1 even has a name. To be locked in. It's the part where you did everything you were told. You got the good grades, you got the degree, you took the sensible path, you picked the safe starter, followed the arrows, beat the gyms in the order the game laid out. And it worked, kind of. You ended up with a life that looks completely fine on paper. The catch is, you wake up inside one day and realize you chose almost none of it on purpose. You're running on momentum, the exact autopilot you slip into replaying the early routes of a game you've beaten 6 times. The thumb is moving, the eyes are glazed, but you're not really looking up. For me, that was a 9 to 5 I was genuinely good at. I was praised for being efficient, likable, adaptable. I hit every target they gave me, and underneath it, there was this pinch I couldn't explain. This quiet, I can't picture myself here in 5 years. Nothing was wrong, and I was laughing on the daily with my colleagues. This was almost the most confusing part, because for some reason, this just wasn't enough. This was a life for someone else. So what happens next feels exactly like the thing going wrong. You start checking out. The stuff that used to land, the holidays, the wins, the little dopamine hits, they become flatter. And then even if you get the date, you hit the PR at the gym, you finish the project, and then you still weirdly feel nothing. A lot of people treat that numbness as the enemy, and I did too. The same way as when I was playing through Ultra Moon, and realizing that I didn't really want to finish the game. I didn't want to play anymore, so I just put it down. Until 2 years later, when I finally finished it. At a hangout with some guys from uni who also plays Pokemon. Back at that point, I just thought I'd gone a bit cynical. Burned out maybe. But here's the reframe that flipped it for me. That flatness was really the game graying out the old objective marker, so you'll finally go looking for a new one. It's called separation, and it's supposed to happen. Now here's the part that actually answers your question. Why do I keep watching these, and why does none of it stick? It's not that the advice is wrong. Things like put yourself out there, just start, pick a thing and commit. That advice is good and all, but the problem is you're running it out of order. You're trying to build a new save file while you're still locked into the old one. You pick the path, you design the perfect character build, but you're choosing it as the locked-in version of you, the one that's still running on somebody else's script. So of course it doesn't take. By Tuesday, the old save loads right back up, because you never actually started a new game. You just renamed the character and gave him a haircut. That's not a discipline problem. You don't need more willpower to force the new habits. You need to stop trying to install them on top of an identity that's quietly already moved on. And this is where most people get genuinely stuck, me very much included, because the second you feel the old life isn't yours, the instinct is to demand a guaranteed new one before you'll budge. You won't take a single step until someone shows you the entire map, which career, which city, which version of you is the correct one. You want the full walkthrough open in the other tab before you'll so much as move a square. I'm a world champion at this trap. Neosphere is my 5th YouTube channel. The very first one years ago I didn't plan at all. I just posted guitar stuff I liked, and it actually grew. And then I got quote-unquote serious, took a course, planned the perfect channel, the branding, the thumbnails, the gear, the whole walkthrough, and it basically went nowhere. That whole planning phase felt like progress, but it wasn't real progress. It was just procrastination in disguise. And then with Neosphere, I just started posting, and then I iterated along the way. And even though I've posted to Neosphere for I think at this point it's like 20 months, approximately 20 months, 1.5 years or something like that, I still don't have a walkthrough for how to make these Neosphere videos. I have an idea and an intuition, but I never really know for sure what will land with my audience and what the algorithm will push out. Just like how your 20s are an open world game with the objective marker switched off. You have no professor pointing you to the next town. You have no glowing icon over the next right door. And the demand for certainty before you move is the single thing keeping you parked in the tall grass, watching other people's runs instead of playing your own. So if you can't think your way to the answer, what do you actually do? You explore. And notice I didn't say find yourself, because that phrase is part of the trap. It assumes the real you is sitting out there in a fixed location like a legendary you just have to look up the coordinates for. You don't find it, you craft it yourself. The self stops being an answer you're hunting and becomes a question you get to keep playing with. And you answer that question the only way the game allows, by moving. Tiny experiments. Pick one thing that seems mildly interesting this week. A camera, a line of code, a conversation, a route you never walked, and run it like a side quest. Not a life decision, just a side quest. The entire point of a side quest is you don't know what it drops until you do it, and you walk away with EXP either way. The biggest level up of my life started as one dumb experiment. I wanted to go on exchange into a new country knowing nobody. I posted in a group chat, "Hey, I'm Marcus, I'm going out tonight. Anyone want to come?" Mortifying back then. With a early 20s guy with social anxiety, I did it anyway, every night for a week. And on most of these nights, somebody would come out. It's not like a huge group of 50 would come out. It compounded really quickly, where I met a bunch of people within the first week, I made a bunch of friends, and I was so happy with myself that I managed to do this. And this was just me exploring and me wanting to meet people. And when I came home from that semester, I was suddenly someone my old friends didn't quite recognize. I didn't think my way into that version of me. I walked into it and met him on the way. The inputs, they create the insight. It's not the other way around. You can journal, you can reflect and meditate on which path is right, and a little of that is healthy, but the next version of you doesn't show up in your head. It shows up in your habits, your messy attempts, the side quest you almost skipped. Now, there's a reason this stage is so easy to get stuck in, and it generally isn't your fault. When you're in that flat checked out phase, there's a multi-billion-dollar machine built to specifically keep you there. That's the feed, that's the scroll. It is literally engineered to take the boredom that's supposed to push you toward that new route and quietly convert it into another 2 hours of numb. It's a patch of grass that spawns infinite level 2 encounters, and it makes you feel like you're doing something, but you basically gain nothing and you log off the exactly same level you logged on. If this video found you, if that "why do I keep watching these" actually stung a little, that sting is the good news. It means you're not fully locked in anymore. You felt the route end, and most people never do. They stay on the first few routes for 40 years and call it being realistic. So if you're thinking you're behind, don't. You're standing at the mouth of the cave with the exclamation point already blinking over your head, and the encounter started the moment you noticed. So here's the only homework, and it's deliberately tiny because you do not need a 30-item action plan. That's the old trap wearing a fresh outfit. Pick one experiment this week, just one. Something that cost an hour and not a complete life overhaul. And run it for the data and not the actual outcome. You're not trying to be good at it, you're trying to find out how it feels from the inside. If it turns out to be a dud, well, amazing, you just cleared a route, and you never have to wonder about it again. And maybe set one thing down while you're at it. One story you keep holding up as proof you're stuck. Such as, I picked the wrong degree, I started too late, I'm not a disciplined person. Sometimes the strongest move in a battle isn't a new attack, it's switching out the Pokemon that keeps feigning and calling it a strategy. One last thing, because I don't want this to sound like I'm recruiting you into becoming a productivity robot who tracks his own blinking. The point of all of this was never to grind harder, it's to get the color of life back. There were Sundays I'd do nothing, with barely any screens, being bored absolutely senseless, and by evening the world would just kinda switch back on. The ideas started to wander back in, the aliveness you remember from being a kid, cross-legged in front of a screen, when a single patch of grass felt like it might contain anything, that's not gone. It's just on the other side of actually playing instead of watching other people play. You don't have to see the whole map. You never will. Nobody does. The ones who look like they do are just better at faking the loading screen. You only have to take the next step while it's still a little blurry. Which, if you never watched an evolution animation, is precisely how it's supposed to look right before the shape changes. Everything goes shaky and out of focus, and then you got the new thing. So tell me down in the comments, what's the one experiment you're running this week? I read all of them and reply to most of them, and just naming out that experiment for yourself is honestly the cheapest way on earth to make yourself actually start. I'll see you in the next one.